8 hours on the road, storms pounding the windshield, every mile fueled by love and hope. But when I finally arrived at my granddaughter's wedding, they didn't seat me with family, they shoved me at the staff's corner table, hidden like an unwanted shadow. What they didn't know? The truth was recorded, and by the end of the night, the real embarrassment wouldn't be mine. My name is Margaret Lane, and at 72, I've learned that dignity isn't measured by the thickness of your wallet, though my daughter seems to have forgotten that lesson. I stared at the wedding invitation on my kitchen table, running my fingers over Emily's handwriting. "Grandma, I can't imagine this day without you. Please come." Those words, penned in purple ink, her favorite color since she was 7, made my chest tighten with a mix of joy and dread. The invitation was beautiful, embossed gold lettering on cream cardstock that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The Hawthorne Estate, Virginia, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, black tie optional. I almost laughed at that last part. Optional for people who owned multiple formal outfits, maybe. I live in a 2-bedroom rental on the outskirts of Greenville, South Carolina, in a neighborhood where the paint peels off houses like old scabs and the lawns are more dirt than grass. It wasn't always this way. Once. Harold and I owned a lovely colonial on Magnolia Street, with a wraparound porch where we'd drink sweet tea and watch Emily chase fireflies during her summer visits. Harold Lane Construction had been our pride, a small but honest business that employed 15 good men and kept food on tables across the county. We'd built homes, churches, even the new wing of the elementary school where I taught 4th grade for 30 years. Then came the city contract, the one that was supposed to secure our retirement, the one that destroyed everything. The details still burn, forged signatures, kickbacks we knew nothing about, our company name attached to substandard materials we'd never ordered. Harold fought it. Spent every penny we'd saved on lawyers, but you can't win against City Hall when the mayor's brother-in-law is running the scheme. The stress killed him. A massive heart attack at 68, slumped over bankruptcy papers at this very kitchen table. That was 4 years ago. Now I survive on Social Security and whatever I can make tutoring kids in reading. $800 here, $1,200 there, enough to keep the lights on and food in the refrigerator, but not enough to stop my daughter's shame. Laura Prescott, she dropped Lane the moment she married Richard, hadn't spoken to me in 6 months. The last time was at Thanksgiving, when she'd called to uninvite me from dinner. "Mother, Richard's colleagues will be there. You understand, don't you? It's just complicated." Complicated. That's what I'd become to my only child, a complication. But Emily, sweet Emily with her father's eyes and my stubborn streak, she never let her mother's poison seep in completely. She'd drive down from Richmond twice a month, bringing groceries she'd claim were extras from sales. Though I knew better, she'd sit at the same scarred table, sharing stories about her job at the museum, her boyfriend James, her dreams of a small wedding surrounded by people who mattered. "When I get married, Grandma," she'd said last Christmas, helping me string lights on my tiny artificial tree, "I want you to walk me down the aisle. You're the one who taught me what love really looks like." Now, holding her invitation, I wondered if she'd remember that promise, or if her mother had finally won, turning me into an obligation to be managed rather than a grandmother to be cherished. I stood up, bones creaking, and walked to the bedroom closet, behind winter coats I rarely needed anymore. I kept a small box of photographs, Harold in his tool belt, grinning beside our first company truck, Laura at her high school graduation, back when she still looked at me with love instead of embarrassment, Emily at 5, covered in flour from our baking adventures, that same purple marker in her hand as she made me a birthday card. "I love you to the moon and back, Grandma." 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks to find something appropriate to wear, to scrape together gas money for the 8-hour drive, to steel myself for whatever treatment awaited me at the Hawthorne Estate. I pressed the invitation to my chest and made my decision. Emily had asked me to come. That was enough. Let Laura glare. Let Richard's family whisper. I'd survived worse than their judgment. I was Margaret Lane, and I would not let shame keep me from my granddaughter's wedding. The morning of the wedding, I woke at 4:30 a.m., unable to sleep any longer. My simple navy dress hung on the bedroom door, pressed and ready. I'd found it at the Methodist Church thrift shop, a small miracle. Really, it was classic. Elegant even, with three-quarter sleeves that hid the age spots on my arms. $40, but worth every penny for how it made me feel almost like the teacher I used to be. I'd saved for 3 weeks, skipping my blood pressure medication refill and living on beans and rice to afford the gas and a modest wedding gift. The crystal picture frame I'd chosen would hold a photo of Emily and James, and I'd wrapped it carefully in silver paper I'd saved from last Christmas. By 6 a.m., I was on the road. The Ford sedan, 20 years old with a rattling exhaust pipe, had been serviced by Miguel down the street in exchange for tutoring his daughter. "It'll get you there, Mrs. Lane," he'd promised, checking the oil one more time. "Just take it easy on the hills." The first hour was peaceful, driving through empty South Carolina roads as the sun painted the sky pink. I'd pack sandwiches and a thermos of coffee to avoid stopping at expensive rest areas. Each mile took me further from my small life and closer to the world my daughter now inhabited, a world where appearance mattered more than character. By noon, the weather turned vicious. Storm clouds gathered like an angry mob, and soon rain pelted my windshield with violence. The old wipers struggled, leaving streaks that made visibility dangerous. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, and reduced my speed to 40 miles per hour while 18-wheelers roared past, throwing walls of water against my car. Near the Virginia border, I had to pull over at a gas station. My hands shook as I pumped $20 of gas, all I could spare. The attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, noticed my formal dress hanging in the back seat. "Special occasion?" she asked. "My granddaughter's wedding," I said, managing a smile despite my nerves. "Drive careful in this weather, ma'am. Supposed to clear up by 3. 3 o'clock, the ceremony time. I calculated distances, factoring in the storm. If I pushed through, I'd make it with maybe 30 minutes to spare. No time to get lost. No margin for error. Back on the highway, I let my mind wander to calm my nerves. I thought about Emily at 16, when her parents were going through a rough patch. She'd stayed with me for a month that summer. We'd painted my kitchen yellow, her choice, and planted tomatoes in the backyard. She'd told me about her dreams of working in a museum, preserving history and stories. "Everyone has a story worth telling. Grandma," she'd said, helping me organize old photo albums, "even the people others overlook." Did she still believe that? Or had her mother's influence finally convinced her that some stories, like mine, were better left untold? The rain finally eased around 2:15 p.m., just as I crossed into the county where the Hawthorne estate waited, my GPS. A second-hand unit Emily had given me last year guided me through roads that grew progressively more manicured. White fences replaced chain link. Mansions replaced modest homes. Even the trees looked wealthier here, their branches pruned to perfection. I stopped at a rest area 10 miles from the venue to change clothes and fix my appearance. The bathroom mirror was unforgiving. My gray hair, carefully styled at the beauty school for $15, had frizzed in the humidity. My face showed every one of my 72 years, marked by loss and struggle. But my eyes, Harold always said I had fighter's eyes. They still held their spark. I applied lipstick with a steady hand, the same coral shade I'd worn to Emily's college graduation. I straightened my dress, pinned my mother's small pearl brooch to the collar, and took a deep breath. "You belong there," I told my reflection. "You're her grandmother. You belong there." The final approach to the Hawthorne estate took my breath away. The driveway curved through acres of manicured vineyard, leading to a stone mansion that looked transplanted from a European postcard. Luxury cars lined the parking area. Mercedes, BMWs, a few Bentleys. My Ford looked like a servant among royalty. I parked far from the entrance, not wanting to embarrass Emily if her friends noticed my car, the wedding gift, and my purse in hand. I walked toward the main entrance, my low heels clicking on cobblestones. Each step felt like crossing into enemy territory. At 2:45 p.m., I reached the doors. Young people in crisp uniforms checked names on tablets. Guests floated past in designer gowns and custom suits, air-kissing and laughing with the easy confidence of the wealthy. I smoothed my dress one last time and stepped forward. My chin raised despite the voice in my head whispering that I didn't belong. "Name, please," the young man asked, his smile professional but distant. "Margaret Lane," I said clearly. "I'm Emily Prescott's grandmother." The young man's fingers danced across his tablet, his brow furrowing slightly. He scrolled once, twice, then looked up with an expression I recognized too well, the polite confusion of someone dealing with an inconvenience. "I'm not seeing you on the main list, ma'am. Let me check something." He stepped aside to confer with a woman holding a clipboard, their whispered conversation punctuated by glances in my direction. My stomach twisted. Around me, guests continued streaming in, greeting each other with the casual warmth of people who belonged. I stood there in my thrift store dress, clutching my wrapped gift like a life preserver. The woman with the clipboard approached, her smile sharp as cut glass. "Mrs. Lane? Yes, we have you right here. You're at table 17. Marcus will escort you." Relief flooded through me until I noticed Marcus. Another uniformed young man wasn't leading me toward the main ballroom entrance where other guests were heading. Instead, he guided me down a side corridor, past the kitchen where staff rushed with silver trays, to a back entrance of the reception hall. "Here we are," Marcus said, gesturing to a round table tucked near the service entrance. "Table 17. I stared at the table in disbelief. 8 chairs surrounded it, but the setup was different from what I'd glimpsed in the main room. Paper napkins instead of cloth, water glasses instead of crystal, no centerpiece, just a small card marking the table number. The other occupants were already seated, the photographer's assistant checking equipment, 2 servers on break, the florist who'd apparently just finished the arrangements. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Emily's grandmother, the bride's grandmother." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The seating arrangement was very specific. "Ma'am, Mrs. Prescott handled it personally." "Mrs. Prescott, Laura, my own daughter had done this." "Which Mrs. Prescott?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The mother of the bride, ma'am." She was very clear about the arrangements. The words hit me like physical blows, very clear, very specific. My daughter had deliberately, methodically, planned to hide me away like something shameful, not just a back table, the staff table. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd hung a sign around my neck. Not good enough. I sank into the chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The photographer's assistant, a young woman with purple streaked hair, glanced up from her camera bag. "You okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Through the service entrance, I could see into the main reception hall. Round tables draped in ivory linens filled the space, each crowned with towering arrangements of roses and peonies. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over women in gowns that probably cost more than my car. The head table, elevated on a platform, looked like something from a fairy tale. That's where family would sit, where I should have been sitting. A server rushed past our table, and the door swung wider. I caught a glimpse of Laura holding court near the entrance, resplendent in a champagne-colored dress that shimmered with what had to be real diamonds. She was laughing, touching the arm of a distinguished older woman, James's mother, I guessed, playing the role of the perfect mother of the bride. "Excuse me," I said to the photographer's assistant, "do you know where the ceremony will be?" "Main garden, through those French doors," she pointed across the room. "Starts in about 20 minutes. Beautiful setup out there. They've got an arbor covered in white roses, rows of white chairs with silk ribbons. Very fancy." Very fancy. Everything my Emily deserved, everything I couldn't give her but wanted to witness. I stood, decision made. Whatever Laura had planned, I wouldn't miss my granddaughter's ceremony. I walked through the service entrance into the main reception hall, keeping my head high despite feeling like a trespasser in enemy territory. Several guests glanced at me with mild curiosity. Who was this plainly dressed older woman? But I kept moving toward the French doors. The garden took my breath away. Hundreds of white roses created a fragrant tunnel leading to an altar where Lake Como would have been jealous. Rows of chairs faced the arbor, each decorated with silk bows and baby's breath. A string quartet played softly in the corner. It was perfect. Magical. Everything a young woman dreams of for her wedding day. I found a seat in the back row, far to the side, partially hidden behind a decorative column wrapped in ivy. From here I could see without being seen. A kindness and a cruelty wrapped into one. Guests filled the chairs, a sea of pastel and jewel tones. I recognized no one except Laura, who swept down the aisle to take her place in the front row, the mother of the bride, in her position of honor, the position that should have included both of us. As 3 o'clock approached, my heart hammered against my ribs. Soon I would see Emily in her wedding dress. Soon I would watch my granddaughter marry the man she loved, even from this hidden corner, even with this burning humiliation. I would be here for her. The music changed, and everyone stood. This was it. But as I watched the processional begin, another realization crashed over me. The person who would walk Emily down the aisle. The honor she'd promised me last Christmas. My chest tightened as I understood the full scope of Laura's plan. She hadn't just hidden me away, she was erasing me entirely. The wedding march swelled, and my heart shattered. There was Emily, radiant in ivory silk and lace, her veil floating behind her like a cloud. She looked exactly as I'd imagined. No, more beautiful than I dared to dream. Her bouquet of purple orchids, her favorite color woven into the white roses, trembled slightly in her hands, and beside her, arm linked through hers, walked Laura in her shimmering designer gown, playing the role that should have been mine. I pressed myself further behind the column, tears burning my eyes, not from jealousy, though that was there too, but from the deliberate cruelty of it all. Emily had promised. "You're the one who taught me what love really looks like," she'd said. Yet here was Laura, who'd been too busy with charity galas to attend Emily's college graduation, who'd missed her high school plays for spa weekends, now basking in this sacred moment. The memory crashed over me unbidden. Emily at 7, standing on my front porch in a torn princess dress, her parents' shouting match audible even from the driveway. "Can I stay with you tonight, Grandma?" she'd asked. I'd opened my arms, and she'd run into them. I'd been her safe harbor then. Now I was hidden behind a pillar like a shameful secret. Through my tears, I watched them process down the aisle. Laura's expression was pure triumph, her smile calculated for the photographer capturing every step. She nodded to important guests, milking her moment in the spotlight. Emily kept her eyes forward, focused on James waiting at the altar. But I caught something in her posture. A stiffness, perhaps? Or was I imagining what I wanted to see? The ceremony began, and I forced myself to focus on Emily's joy rather than my pain. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together. James looked at Emily like she hung the stars, and when she smiled back at him, I saw genuine happiness there. That's what mattered. That's why I'd driven 8 hours through storms, not for recognition, but to witness this moment, even from the shadows. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the officiant asked. "Her father and I do," Laura announced, her voice carrying clearly across the garden. Richard stood from the front row to join them, completing the picture-perfect family tableau, the family that no longer included me. I bit my lip hard enough to taste copper, forcing down the sob building in my chest. They were rewriting history in real time, erasing the nights I'd held Emily through breakups, the afternoons teaching her to drive in my old car, the summers she'd lived with me when her parents' marriage teetered on the edge. None of that existed in this version of the story. The ceremony continued. Vows exchanged, rings blessed, promises made. I memorized every detail of Emily's face, storing it away like treasure. Her smile when James stumbled over his vows, the way she touched his cheek when he started to cry, the joy that radiated from her like sunshine. This was what I'd come to see. This made the humiliation bearable. "You may kiss the bride." The garden erupted in applause as James dipped Emily dramatically. Her laughter bright as bells, they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, followed by the wedding party. Laura practically floated behind them, waving to guests like visiting royalty. I stayed hidden until the garden emptied, then made my way back to the reception hall. Table 17 waited for me, unchanged. The photographer's assistant was gone, but a few servers sat eating hurried dinners before the reception began. I took my place among them, the bride's grandmother at the helps table. "You were at the ceremony?" One server, an older woman named Rosa, according to her name tag, asked kindly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Beautiful wedding," she continued. "That dress must have cost a fortune. The mother was telling everyone it was custom made in Paris." Of course Laura was. I thought of my own wedding dress, handmade by Harold's mother. Every stitch placed with love. Emily had asked to see it once, had tried it on in my bedroom and twirled like a ballerina. "Maybe I'll wear this when I get married, Grandma," she'd said. Another promise lost to Laura's influence. The main reception space filled with guests finding their seats at the elegant tables. The head table remained empty, waiting for the grand entrance. I could see place cards from here. James's parents, Laura and Richard, the wedding party. No card for me, even though tradition dictated the bride's grandmother should be there. I'd been erased as thoroughly as if I'd never existed. A young man with a professional camera suddenly appeared at our table. "David Harper," he introduced himself. "The wedding videographer. Mind if I sit while I change batteries?" "Of course not," I said, grateful for any distraction from the ache in my chest. He settled beside me, fingers working efficiently with his equipment. "You're not staff, are you?" he asked quietly, glancing at my dress, my pearl brooch. "What gave it away?" I tried for humor but failed. "You were at the ceremony. I saw you behind the pillar." His voice held no judgment, just observation. "Family?" "The bride's grandmother," I admitted, the words bitter on my tongue. His hand stilled on the camera. "And you're sitting here?" Apparently, I'm too embarrassing for the main tables. The truth spilled out before I could stop it. "My daughter made the arrangements. She's ashamed that I'm not—" I gestured at the opulent space. "This—" David's expression darkened. "That's horrible. I'm sorry." "Emily doesn't know," I said quickly, needing to defend my granddaughter. "She would never. She asked me to come. Wrote it on the invitation herself." "But she must know you're here, right? She'll see you're not at a family table?" I thought of the receiving line forming in the foyer, the hundreds of guests Emily would greet, the chaos and joy that would sweep her along. She has 300 guests to think about. I doubt she'll notice one missing grandmother. David looked like he wanted to say more, but the DJ's voice boomed across the space. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. and Mrs. James Morrison." The room exploded in applause as the newlyweds entered. Emily glowing with happiness, James spinning her into their first dance. I watched from my exile, my heart simultaneously full and breaking. This was supposed to be our dance. I'd taught her to waltz in my living room when she was 12, her feet on mine as we moved to my old records. Now she danced in a spotlight while I sat in shadows, and I finally understood the full measure of my daughter's cruelty. She hadn't just hidden me away. She'd stolen my memories and claimed them as her own. David Harper didn't leave after changing his batteries. Instead, he pulled out a small tablet and began scrolling through footage, his expression growing increasingly troubled. I tried not to watch, focusing instead on Emily and James as they moved through their first dance. But something in David's manner caught my attention. "Mrs. Lane," he said quietly, leaning closer so the servers couldn't hear. "I need to show you something. I was recording in the bridal suite earlier, standard behind-the-scenes footage for the wedding video. I captured something I don't think was meant to be filmed. My hands trembled as I took the tablet he offered. On the screen, I saw the luxurious bridal suite, Emily sitting at a vanity while a makeup artist worked on her face. Laura stood behind her, champagne glass in hand, talking to another woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, cold-looking, probably James's mother. David tapped the play button, and their voices filled my ears through the small speakers. Absolutely mortifying, Laura was saying. Can you imagine? My mother wanted to wear this ancient dress she probably bought 20 years ago. I told Emily it would be kinder to seat her somewhere. Discreet. The other woman laughed, a sound like ice cracking. How thoughtful of you to spare everyone the discomfort. Nothing ruins wedding photos quite like... She paused delicately. Financial embarrassment. My stomach churned, but worse was coming. Mother's living situation is just tragic, Laura continued, her voice dripping false sympathy. A rental in that horrible neighborhood. I offered to put her in a home, somewhere clean at least, but she's too proud, still pretending she's middle class when she's really just... Another pause. Poor... Does Emily know? James's mother asked. Emily sees what she wants to see. She has this fantasy that her grandmother is some sort of saint. I've tried to protect her from the reality, the shabby clothes, that awful car. Did you know she tutors children for grocery money, like some sort of servant? I wanted to stop the video, but couldn't look away. Emily sat silent at the vanity, her face unreadable under the makeup artist's hands. Well, you've handled it beautifully, James's mother said. The staff table was inspired, close enough that you can't be accused of excluding her, far enough that no one important will have to interact with her. I told Emily her grandmother chose to sit with her own kind, that she'd be more comfortable there. Sometimes a little white lie is kinder than the truth. The video continued, but I'd heard enough. I pushed the tablet back to David, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The cruelty was one thing, I'd suspected as much. But the lies to Emily, the deliberate manipulation, the way she'd poisoned my granddaughter's perception. There's more, David said gently, about 15 minutes later, when Emily was alone. Do you want to see? I nodded, unable to speak. The screen showed Emily at the same vanity, now alone, talking on her phone. I know, Grandma. I'm just so happy you're coming. No, don't worry about any of that. You'll be with family. That's what matters. Walking me down the aisle? Of course I remember. I meant every word. My heart cracked. She'd called me that morning. I remembered the conversation, how I'd worried about fitting in, how she'd reassured me. She had no idea what her mother had planned. Mom says you wanted to sit somewhere quiet, Emily continued on the video. But after the ceremony, we'll have our dance, okay? The one you taught me. I love you too, Grandma. Drive safe. Tears streamed down my face. Emily didn't know. She thought I'd chosen to sit with the staff. She thought I'd abandoned our plans by choice. This is wrong, David said, taking back the tablet. Deeply wrong. That woman out there loves you. I can see it in how she talked to you. She has no idea what her mother's done. What am I supposed to do? I whispered. Tell her at her wedding reception? Ruin her day with this ugliness? You don't have to ruin anything, David said thoughtfully, but she should know the truth. Maybe not every detail, but enough to understand why you're sitting here instead of where you belong. I thought of Emily, radiant in her wedding dress, believing her grandmother had chosen segregation over celebrating with her. The lie hurt worse than the insult. Laura hadn't just hidden me, she'd made me complicit in my own erasure. I have all this footage, David continued. The whole conversation, unedited. I'm supposed to delete the unflattering stuff, only keep the pretty moments. But this, he shook his head. This feels like something that needs to be preserved. Evidence. Evidence of what? That I'm an embarrassment to my daughter? That won't change anything. Evidence that you're not the one who should be embarrassed, he said firmly. Look, I've filmed a lot of weddings. I've seen family drama. Believe me. But this is something else. That woman out there deliberately hurt you and lied to her daughter about it. That's not just cruel, it's evil." The word hung between us. Evil. Was that what Laura had become? When had my bright-eyed little girl transformed into someone capable of such calculated cruelty? "Can you make me a copy?" I asked suddenly. "Of just Emily's phone call. Not the cruel parts. I don't want to hurt her with those. But the part where she talks about our plans, where she says she loves me." David nodded. "I can do that. Give me your phone." As he worked with the technology, I barely understood. I watched the reception unfold. The salad course was being served at the elegant tables while we sat with our paper napkins and water glasses. Laura held court at the head table, laughing and gesturing, the picture of maternal pride. How many other lies had she told? How many family gatherings had I missed because Emily thought I didn't want to come? How many milestones had been stolen from me through Laura's careful manipulation? "Here," David handed back my phone. "I sent it to you. And Mrs. Lane, I'm going to keep the full recording, not to use it or anything, but sometimes the truth needs a witness." The servers around us were getting up, preparing for the dinner service. Soon our table would be empty except for me, the grandmother who supposedly chose to sit with the help rather than celebrate with her family. I looked at my phone, at Emily's face frozen on the screen mid-word, caught in the moment of promising we'd dance together. She'd remember that promise eventually. She'd look for me during the traditional family dances and wonder why I'd stayed away. Unless I didn't stay away. "Thank you, David," I said, when standing with new resolve. "You've given me something precious, the truth. Now I need to figure out what to do with it." He squeezed my shoulder gently. "Whatever you decide, that young woman deserves to know how much you love her. Don't let anyone steal that from either of you." As he gathered his equipment and left, I remained standing, my decision crystallizing. I wouldn't make a scene. I wouldn't ruin Emily's wedding, but I wouldn't be erased either. Somewhere between the cruelty and the lies, there had to be space for truth. And maybe, just maybe, love could still find a way to slip through the cracks in Laura's carefully constructed walls. The dinner service was in full swing when I finally gathered my courage. I'd watched Emily from afar for over an hour, wrestling with what to do. Every time she laughed at the head table, every time she leaned into James with such joy, I talked myself out of approaching her. "Don't ruin this. Don't be selfish. Don't make a scene." But then the band leader announced the family dances would begin soon, and I knew my window was closing. Emily would look for me then. She'd scan the room for her grandmother, expecting our waltz, and find only Laura's lies. I made my way along the edges of the reception hall, staying close to the walls where the lighting was dimmer. Several guests glanced at me curiously. Who was this plainly dressed woman creeping through the shadows? But no one stopped me. I reached the terrace doors and slipped outside into the cooling evening air. The terrace stretched along the building, dotted with cocktail tables where guests had stepped out for fresh air or cigarettes. I moved to the far end, near where the bridal party had posed for photos earlier, and sent Emily a text. "Sweetheart, could you meet me on the terrace for just a moment? By the photo arbor? Love, Grandma." Then I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. She might not check her phone. Laura might intercept her. 100 things could go wrong, but I had to try. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I was about to give up when I heard the click of heels on stone and Emily appeared, still radiant in her wedding gown but with concern written across her face. "Grandma?" She hurried toward me, her dress rustling. "Is everything okay? Mom said you wanted to sit somewhere quiet, but I've been looking for you. They're about to start the—" "Emily," I interrupted gently, catching her hands in mine. "Sweet girl, I need to tell you something." Up close, I could see the worry creasing her forehead. "Are you feeling sick? Is it your blood pressure? Mom said you've been having health problems." "No." The firmness in my voice stopped her. "No, sweetheart, your mother. She's been telling you things that aren't true." Emily's expression shifted to confusion. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and found the video David had sent. "I need you to watch something. It's from this morning when you called me." She took the phone, and I watched her face as she heard her own voice promising we'd dance together, talking about walking her down the aisle. When it ended, she looked up at me with dawning horror. "Grandma, I don't understand. Mom said you chose—" "I didn't choose anything," I said quietly. "Your mother seated me at table 17 with the catering staff. She told them specifically where to put me." Emily's face drained of color. No, that's not— Mom wouldn't—" "She told you I wanted to sit there? That I'd be more comfortable?" The guilt that flashed across Emily's features was answer enough. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh my God, Grandma, I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have checked." "No." I pulled her into my arms, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "This is not your fault. You were lied to." She pulled back, anger now mixing with her tears. "The aisle. She said you felt too nervous, that you asked her to do it instead, but you didn't. Did you?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "I'm going to kill her," Emily whispered fiercely. "How could she do this? How could she—" She stopped, breathing hard. "No, not tonight. I won't let her ruin tonight." "Emily, you don't have to do anything. I just needed you to know the truth. I needed you to know I didn't abandon you." "Abandon me?" She cupped my face in her hands, her engagement ring catching the light. "Grandma, you drove 8 hours through a storm to be here. You're wearing your beautiful dress. You're here even though Mom tried to hide you away like some shameful secret. You could never abandon me." The tears came then, for both of us. We held each other on that terrace, grandmother and granddaughter, while inside, the party continued without us. "I want to fix this," Emily said when we finally pulled apart. "I want to march in there and drag you to the head table where you belong." "That would cause the kind of scene your mother fears most," I said wryly. A calculating look crossed Emily's face, one I recognized from when she was little and planning mischief. "Yes, it would, wouldn't it?" "Emily." "Grandma, do you trust me?" I looked into her eyes, Harold's eyes, really that same determined spark, and nodded. "Then, here's what we're going to do. The family dances are about to start. Mom will expect me to dance with her and Dad first, then James's parents, but I'm changing the order." She gripped my hands tighter. "You're going to walk back inside with me. We're going to go straight to the dance floor, and when they announce the family dances, you're going first, our waltz, like we planned." "Your mother will be furious." "Good." The word came out sharp as glass. "She lied to me. She hurt you. She tried to erase you from my wedding. She deserves to be furious." "But this is your day." "Exactly. My day, my choice. And I choose you." Emily's voice broke slightly. "You're the one who raised me when Mom was too busy social climbing. You taught me to read, to cook, to be kind. You were there for every heartbreak, every triumph she missed. You think I don't remember? You think I've forgotten who really loved me?" "Your mother does love you, in her way." "No," Emily cut me off. "Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't hide away the people who matter because they don't fit some image." She straightened, steel in her spine. "I've let her control too much for too long, always making excuses, always keeping the peace, but not tonight, not about this." She took my arm, linking it through hers the way Laura had during the processional. "Ready, Grandma?" I thought about the humiliation of table 17, the pain of watching Laura take my place, the years of being deemed not good enough. Then I looked at Emily. Brilliant, fierce Emily who'd chosen truth over comfortable lies, and smiled. "I've been ready all my life, sweetheart." We walked back into the reception together, heads high. The band was already setting up for the family dances. Laura stood near the dance floor, champagne in hand, clearly expecting to be called first. She didn't notice us until we were almost beside her. The look on her face when she saw us arm in arm, shock morphing into fury, then forced composure as she realized people were watching, was a masterpiece of barely controlled emotion. "Emily," she hissed, low enough that only we could hear. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done from the beginning," Emily replied calmly. "Dancing with my grandmother." The band leader caught Emily's eye, and she nodded. His voice boomed across the reception. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin our family dances. The bride has requested to start with a special waltz with her grandmother, Mrs. Margaret Lane." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Laura's face went white, then red. But it was too late. Emily was already leading me onto the dance floor, and the opening notes of "The Blue Danube" filled the air. The same waltz I'd taught her to dance to all those years ago. As I placed my hand on her waist and we began to move, Emily whispered, "I love you, Grandma," to the moon and back. The waltz carried us across the dance floor, and for those precious moments, the rest of the world faded away. Emily's wedding dress swirled around us like clouds, and I was transported back to my living room 20 years ago, teaching a giggling 5-year-old to count 3/4 time on my worn carpet. But this wasn't my living room, and we weren't alone. 300 guests watched us dance, and I could feel the weight of their attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Who was this plainly dressed old woman? Why was she dancing first, before the parents? "Let them stare," Emily murmured, reading my tension. "You're beautiful. Grandma, you're exactly where you belong." As we turned, I caught sight of Laura standing at the edge of the dance floor. Her face was a mask of controlled fury. Her champagne glass gripped so tightly I thought it might shatter. Richard stood beside her, looking confused and slightly annoyed. They'd been ready for their spotlight moment, and Emily had stolen it away. No, I corrected myself. Emily had given it to the person who'd earned it. The music swelled, and Emily surprised me by speaking loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My grandmother taught me this waltz when I was 5 years old. She put my feet on top of hers and danced me around her living room until I could do it myself." Her voice carried clearly, deliberately. "She's been teaching me how to move through life with grace ever since." My throat tightened with emotion. Around us, I noticed phones coming out, guests recording this unexpected moment. Good, I thought fiercely. Let them capture this. Let there be evidence that I was here, that I mattered, that love could triumph over shame. When the waltz ended, the room erupted in applause. Emily hugged me tight, then turned to the crowd with my hand still in hers. "I need to say something," she announced, and the band leader quickly handed her a microphone. My stomach dropped. Emily had that look, the same determined expression she'd worn at 8 when she'd stood up to playground bullies. "Most of you don't know my grandmother, Margaret Lane," Emily began, her voice strong and clear. "That's partly because she lives a few states away, and partly because—" She paused, looking directly at Laura. "Because some people in my family are ashamed that she doesn't have money anymore." Gasps rippled through the crowd. This wasn't typical wedding speech material. Laura started forward, but Richard held her back, his face darkening with embarrassment. "My grandfather died 4 years ago," Emily continued. "He lost everything trying to fight a corrupt business deal. It killed him, literally. And my grandmother, who taught 4th grade for 30 years, who raised me when my parents were too busy to notice I existed, she lost everything too." I tugged at Emily's hand, whispering, "Sweetheart, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," she said firmly, then spoke into the microphone again. "Tonight, someone decided my grandmother should sit at table 17, with the catering staff, hidden away like something shameful." The gasps turned to murmurs of shock and disapproval. I saw James's mother whispering furiously to her husband. Other guests were looking around, trying to spot table 17, understanding dawning on their faces. But here's what that someone didn't understand. Emily's voice rose with passion. "You can't hide love. You can't make dignity ashamed of itself. And you can't erase someone who helped build who I am." She turned to face Laura directly. "Mom, I know you meant well. I know you think appearances matter more than anything, but you're wrong. What matters is that Grandma drove 8 hours through a storm to be here. What matters is that she's wearing her best dress and her mother's pearl brooch. What matters is that she loves me, and I love her, and I will not let anyone make her feel less than the treasure she is. The silence that followed was deafening. Laura's face had gone from red to white to a strange mottled purple. Several of her society friends were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to disapproval. The carefully cultivated image she'd spent years building was cracking like ice in spring. Then someone started clapping. It was David Harper, the videographer, his camera still rolling. Others joined in, first a trickle, then a flood. Soon the entire room was applauding, and I saw tears on more than a few faces. Emily handed back the microphone and pulled me into another hug. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything." "You have nothing to apologize for," I whispered back. "Nothing at all." As the applause died down, the band leader, bless him, smoothly announced the parent dances. Laura had no choice but to take her turn, though her smile looked painted on and her movements were stiff. The contrast to our easy waltz was obvious to everyone. When the formal dances ended, something remarkable happened. Guests began approaching me, not the polite, distant acknowledgments I'd feared, but genuine warmth. "Mrs. Lane," one elegant older woman said, taking my hands. "I'm James's Aunt Patricia. What Emily said, that was beautiful and true. Money isn't everything. Character is—" "Thank you," I managed, overwhelmed. Another woman joined us. "I'm Catherine Westfield. I actually remember reading about your husband's case in the papers. Tragic what the city council did to those contractors. Criminal, really." More people came. Some shared their own stories of financial hardship or family members who'd been deemed embarrassing. Others simply wanted to meet the grandmother who'd raised such a remarkable young woman. Table 17 sat empty and forgotten, while I found myself at the center of a warm circle of acceptance. Through it all, Laura lurked at the edges of the room like a storm cloud. I caught her trying to intercept guests heading my way, her fake smile and redirecting conversation fooling no one. The punishment I'd never sought was happening naturally. Her own cruelty had become her humiliation. "Grandma?" Emily appeared at my elbow during a brief break in the well-wishers. "James's mother wants to apologize. She didn't know about the seating. She's mortified that she went along with Mom's lies." I looked across the room to where Mrs. Morrison stood, her earlier cold elegance replaced by genuine distress. "She doesn't need to—" "Yes, she does. We all do. We let Mom control the narrative for too long." Emily's jaw set with determination. "But not anymore. Things are going to change." As if summoned by the words, Laura materialized beside us, her society smile razor sharp. "Emily, darling, don't you think you've made enough of a scene? Your guests are talking." "Good," Emily said simply. "They should talk. They should know exactly what kind of person you are." Laura's mask finally slipped completely. "How dare you!" "How dare you!" Emily shot back, her voice low but fierce. "You lied to me. You tried to hide my grandmother like some dirty secret. You made me believe she chose to stay away when you were the one pushing her out." "I was protecting you," Laura hissed. "From the embarrassment. From the questions. From love?" Emily's voice could have cut glass. "From the woman who actually raised me while you were at your charity galas? The only embarrassment here is you, Mother, and everyone knows it now." Laura opened her mouth, closed it, then spun on her designer heel and stalked away. Several guests watched her go, and I heard one woman murmur to her companion, "Well, now we know where the real class in this family comes from." Emily turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Grandma, for all of it, for every holiday you missed, every birthday party you weren't invited to, every lie she told. I should have seen it. I should have fought harder." I pulled her close, my own tears falling. "You're fighting now. That's what matters." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of unexpected warmth. James's mother, Charlotte Morrison, approached me with tears in her eyes, apologizing profusely for her part in the earlier conversation. I'm ashamed of myself, she said quietly. I have a mother too. I should have known better. I found myself seated at the head table for dinner. Emily had literally dragged an extra chair over herself, placing it between her seat and James's. Laura had fled to the bathroom and hadn't returned. Richard sat alone at their assigned spot, downing scotch and avoiding eye contact with everyone. During the cake cutting, Emily made sure I stood right beside her. 3 generations of strong women, she announced to the photographer, linking her arm through mine. The camera captured us laughing as James smeared a bit of frosting on Emily's nose. A real moment of joy. Not the staged perfection Laura had orchestrated. It was during the final dance that Laura made her last stand. She appeared at the edge of the dance floor, her makeup refreshed but unable to hide the rage in her eyes. She beckoned to Emily imperiously. Emily excused herself from James and walked over. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could read the body language. Laura gesturing angrily, Emily standing firm, shaking her head. Then Emily said something that made Laura rear back as if slapped. My daughter's gaze found me across the room, and in that moment, I saw pure hatred. Not disappointment, not embarrassment. Hatred for existing, for being loved, for refusing to disappear. Then she was gone, sweeping out of the reception hall with Richard scrambling to follow. She never said goodbye to Emily, never wished her well, just left, taking her poisonous presence with her. What did you tell her? I asked Emily when she returned. The truth, Emily said simply, that she's no longer welcome in our lives until she can treat you with respect, that any future grandchildren will know you, not her, that she made her choice, and now she has to live with it. As the evening wound down, I found myself surrounded by Emily and James's friends, young people who'd heard the story and wanted to know more about the grandmother who'd driven through storms for love. They asked about my teaching days, about Harold, about the farm where I'd grown up, for the first time in years. I felt seen not as an embarrassment, but as a person with stories worth telling. David Harper approached as I was gathering my purse to leave. Mrs. Lane, he said, I want you to know I'm keeping all the footage from tonight, the good and the bad. Emily might want it someday, to remember how she stood up for what's right. Thank you, I said, meaning it deeply, for everything. The last surprise came as I was walking to my car. Emily and James caught up with me in the parking lot, Emily still in her wedding dress, now slightly rumpled from dancing. Where do you think you're going? Emily demanded. Home, sweetheart, it's late, and you have your honeymoon. We changed our plans, James interrupted, speaking to me directly for the first time all evening. We're not leaving until noon tomorrow. You're staying at the hotel with us tonight. We already got you a room. I couldn't. Yes, you can, Emily said firmly. We have breakfast reservations at 9 a.m., the 3 of us, because you're family, real family, the kind that matters. I looked at these 2 young people, Emily fierce with love, James solid and supportive beside her, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just acceptance, but belonging. All right, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Breakfast at 9. As we walked back toward the hotel together, Emily in the middle linking our arms, she said quietly, They thought you were the embarrassment, but you were right. Grandma, you were the mirror, and Mom couldn't bear what she saw. The truth of it rang like a bell in the night air. Laura had seen herself reflected in my presence, what she could become without her money and status, what she valued most, what she feared beyond measure, not poverty itself, but the loss of the facades she'd built her life around. But Emily had seen something different in that same mirror, love that didn't need decoration, dignity that couldn't be bought, and the true wealth of family bonds that no amount of money could purchase or replace. I thought about my 8-hour drive that morning, the storms I'd pushed through, the fear I'd swallowed just to be here. Every mile had been worth it. Not for the revenge, though I couldn't deny a small satisfaction in Laura's public humiliation, but for this moment. Walking with my granddaughter on her wedding night, knowing that truth had won over lies, that love had conquered shame. The valet took my old Ford's keys without a single smirk, and as we entered the glittering hotel lobby, heads turned, not because of my modest dress or department store shoes, but because I walked between the bride and groom like I belonged there. Because I did belong there. I always had. Laura thought she'd hidden me away, but instead she'd revealed herself. In trying to erase me, she'd been erased. The family she'd been so desperate to impress had seen her cruelty laid bare, while I, the embarrassment, the poor relation, the shameful secret, had been embraced with open arms. As Emily hugged me goodnight at my hotel room door, she whispered, "I love you, Grandma. Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," I whispered back. "Not in this lifetime or the next." The door closed behind me, and I sat on the plush hotel bed, still in my thrift store dress and grandmother's pearls, and let the tears finally fall freely. Not tears of sadness or humiliation, but of relief and joy and vindication. They'd sat me with the help, but I'd ended up at the head table. They'd tried to hide me, but I'd been seen. They'd attempted to erase me, but love had written me back into the story in permanent ink. And Laura? She'd have to live with the knowledge that everyone in her precious social circle had witnessed her downfall. The mother of the bride who'd fled her own daughter's wedding in disgrace, the woman who'd valued appearance over family, status over love, lies over truth. As I finally changed out of my dress and prepared for bed, I caught sight of myself in the hotel mirror. An old woman looked back, gray-haired, lined face. Modest circumstances written in every detail, but her eyes sparkled with victory. Not the cruel victory of revenge, but the quiet triumph of truth recognized, love acknowledged, and dignity restored. Tomorrow there would be breakfast with Emily and James. Next month, she'd promised to visit me in Greenville. And someday, God willing, there would be great-grandchildren who would know me, really know me, not the edited version Laura had tried to create. I climbed into the soft hotel bed, luxury I hadn't felt in years, and smiled into the darkness. 8 hours through storms, 300 miles of doubt and fear, one thrift store dress against a sea of designer gowns. And in the end, love had won. Love always wins, if you're brave enough to let it. Laura thought I was the embarrassment. Turns out, I was the mirror. And she couldn't bear what she saw. May? Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts about family, forgiveness, and standing up for what's right. Your stories and experiences make this community special. Until next time, remember, true dignity comes from love, not money, and the bonds that matter most can never be hidden away.